Welcome to the Envisioner's Journey. I am Sherelle Bates. On the Envisioner's Journey, we believe in helping people prepare their minds and shape their thinking so that they're constantly progressing forward. I am speaking specifically to people who've never figured out what they wanted, people who've lost their identity due to their commitments to family and or their career, and people who may have figured out what they wanted, but they never press go. And so they're sitting on the fence. The Envisioner's Journey seeks to bring you personal stories and experts that will inspire you to action. So today, I would like to ask, when was the last time you tapped into your imagination? When I was a financial advisor and even a district sales manager at Avon, I would often talk to people about their future and ask, where do they see themselves? And it really made me begin to realize how hard it was for people to dream and imagine. And it made complete sense when you really think about it, because when we were younger, we were told not to daydream. We were told to come back down to earth. And so I started to think about how can we help support people practice imagining, practice daydreaming again. Our guest today, Michelle Clark, shows us how, through the power of improv, we can force our mind to think in a forward and progressive way. Today's guest is an improv actor and coach. Michelle Clark is a dynamic global leadership coach and online facilitator. Her passions include psychologically safe leadership and saying yes to life. Originally from South Africa, she is now based in Santiago, Chile, but follows her motto as a frequent traveler who works on the ground but plays in the cloud. Thank you so much for joining us today, Michelle. I am really excited to see you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be in this space with you.
So naturally, as you kind of figured it out by now, I'm a pretty positive person. So when I'm faced with thoughts of the future, I do pretty easily believe that anything is possible. I realize though that everyone doesn't think that way. There are some people who really struggle with thinking about what's possible and opportunities. And I'm always trying to find ways to help people be more open to possibilities. So when my daughters years and years ago were younger, they took improv. And that's when I first learned about the concept of yes and I was so excited for them to learn that because it's just such a positive way to look at life in and of itself. So when I started thinking about this podcast and how I wanted to really think through or to be able to speak to how someone can think about what's possible, it went back to the whole concept of improv for me. And so when I came across your name and what you do, I was so excited to meet you because not only are you an improv coach, but you speak to life experiences as well in the work that you do. So I would love to just start off by talking about what's the concept of yes and what are the concepts of improv and how can people use those things in their everyday life?
Super. Let's paint a picture of what improv is for those in the audience who perhaps are not so familiar with it as you are and your daughters are. Imagine you and I were going to go to the theater tonight, which I would love. We would look up the name of a play. We would arrive there. There would be a set, actors in costumes. They would have practiced their lines and they would play a story for us. Improv is that same group of actors. In many instances, they're not necessarily professional actors. They come together. There are no costumes. There are no sets. There is no storylines that they've been practicing. They collectively, using these principles of improv, and we'll talk about those, they collectively communicate in a way that creates a story that's never been seen before, that's completely unique. So it is improvised, it will not be seen again. And one of those principles, as you've so rightly said, is this concept of yes and.
Mm-hmm.
So those who work in an improv group are very familiar with agreeing to whatever reality is facing them and then adding on a new piece of information so that the other actors can pick up on that. This is a beautiful concept for life if we accept the reality, yes it, and then look at what's possible. And while that's a beautiful principle of improv, Sherelle, I actually wanted to share with you another principle of improv that I find to be more strikingly impactful. And that's the concept that there are never any mistakes in improv. There are nothing that is offered as a mistake, nothing that has happened as a mistake. The reality is not a mistake, but rather we take whatever is offered and we say yes and to that beautiful thing. And I say beautiful, even though sometimes in the reality of the world we live in, some of the things that happen to us feel like mistakes. Mm-hmm. They feel like that shouldn't have happened and that was not what I desired or wanted. But it's, as you say, if one is able to look at the positive, if one is able to say yes and yes, that happened, and what can I do with that, we have a far greater chance of facing the uncertain future with a more positive attitude and mindset.
So my question in hearing everything that you described, and definitely around, I forgot about the no mistakes as the other rule. I remember hearing that one as well. The concept of yes and no mistakes really just kind of answers a lot of things that people feel on the inside as they're thinking about what their future can hold. How does those two things really help foster what's possible for someone?
Let's try and get it into a practical example.
Sure.
I'm trying to think about something that ordinarily might be considered like a really bad thing that could happen to somebody. And I wonder if you have one, because I'm reluctant to share, but I'll share. Recently, and nobody knows this yet, but they will once this recording goes out. Recently, I've come to Brazil on a trip, and I was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and I was unfortunately robbed. That was not a mistake, even though I'm saying I was in the wrong place at the wrong time, because consequent to that experience having happened, there's so much that I've realized that was actually right. So much that I realized how worse the situation could have been, how smart I actually was in how I was carrying my travel documents and those I was not traveling, and how I've managed to have so much faith in the circumstance and people around me now that I've been able to rectify the documents and the lost goodies. So there really is in the immediate instance, we want to go, no, this is a mistake and this isn't how it should happen. But really, when we consider this concept of there are no mistakes, yes, this has happened. And what do I need to do, or who do I need to become to overcome what I think is not a nice situation? How do I need to grow? Who do I need to reach out to? So there's a lot of, yes, that happened, and what is being demanded of me in order to make possible a new future.
I wouldn't want that to happen to anyone, and I can only imagine what you were thinking during that time period after it's happened as you're processing out, right? But you sound like you've used I can hear the no mistakes when you said, well, I feel like I did everything right as far as the travel documents and things of that nature. But as you're going through the whole process of it all, how did you apply yes and to that situation?
Yeah, I think it's so critical for us to recognize that trauma does need to be felt. So in any situation we don't want to find ourselves with, it's not as easy as, oh, I'm positive Mary, and just like that, I'll take this and yes, and. There is a necessity to feel anger, feel grief, feel the necessary emotions that one needs to feel in order to move to the other side. And then one moves into a more rational process. Now I've felt this and I've leaned into that feeling. And now I need to start saying, what's the and bit in this? And how do I move myself forward in a more positive way into this uncertain future, which is what improv is, right? Is we don't really know where the story is going to evolve.
Correct. It's so true. Not only do we not know the story and how our lives will turn out, anything that we decide to do as we envision what our future looks like, it's all uncharted. It's all new. And even if someone else has done it before us, for us ourselves, it's new and it's an uncharted area, and it requires us to step into new things and be open to those new things. One of the things that you talked about before in our past conversations were about holding space, right? You talked through one of the favorite things that you love to do is observe facilitators in this work, in the improv work. And you love the concept of holding space as you observe these facilitators. Can
One
you
of
speak a little
the
bit to that?
biggest aspects that attracted me to becoming an improv facilitator and an improv coach is that the concept of how we look at each other in improv and how we should look at each other in life, and I'm sure you do the same for your coaching clients, is to look at people as if they are artists and poets and scientists and geniuses and incredible beings that can do incredible things. And then we need to get out of their way so they can do those incredible things. And what we do as coaches and facilitators is we hold space for people to take risks. We hold space for them to choose new behaviors, perhaps stretch outside what may have been a habit of behavior to try something new and different. And I think that's what we're doing in our coaching work most of the time, is we are holding the space within which people can explore uncharted territories and take new behavioral risks.
You're absolutely right. Now, I'm not technically a coach.
Okay.
I just love talking to other coaches,
Thank
but
you.
I do agree with you. I do believe that I am big on people stepping into what is nagging at them. When I think about someone who's pursuing their future, there's sometimes we get in our own way with our thinking. There are obstacles, and usually our biggest obstacle is ourselves. And so how do people get out of their own way?
Yeah, I love that question when you phrased it right from the get-go. How do we get out of our own way? Another one of I use principles in inverted commas because there's not a lot of rules to improv, but there are some things we like to keep telling the improvisers. And one of them is drop your agenda. And that is that phrase we could almost tell ourselves is drop your agenda. So you said earlier, if we can see it in our mind's eye, we can have it. And very often we try and control that agenda toward getting it. And that's what gets in the way, because we are not in control. We cannot control. And when we attempt to, and we fail, and we start giving ourselves a hard time because it didn't go as we wanted, it's because we've stuck to an agenda that we have in our own head. And so learning to drop that agenda in favor of what may come. Invite what may come. I keep the end goal. I try not to move into agendas. I can take right actions, and then I need to wait to see the response of those actions. But getting out of my way has a lot to do with drop the agenda and allow to happen what's going to happen. What do you think?
Yes, it goes back to that whole process of letting go. I
Right.
love that.
Yeah.
So what are some improv games that people can play, or what are some or that will help them think through someone who's looking to change their perspective?
Mm. That's exciting. One of the one of the games that we usually play in a group, and of course we're not in a group, we could try it, you and I, but is called a one word at a time story, which means that one
Yes, let's do
person
it.
says one word, the other person says the next word, the other person the next word, but we have no idea where the story's going, right? Because we're only offering one word at a
Right.
time. So we can try it. You and I can give it a bash to tell a one word at a time story. Would you like to begin us?
But no, you can start it.
Oh, okay. I'll start it. Okay, I'll start it. Let's say,
Okay.
tomorrow,
I
want
to
dance.
uh, where
Drop your
I want
agenda.
to ask a
Drop your
question so bad, like,
agenda.
yes, I gotta drop the agenda. Okay. Let's go again. This is a good one. This is really hard. I used to watch this all the time on Whose Line Is It Anyway? It was one of my
Right.
favorite games that they played. This
Mm.
is a really hard to think because I was like, well, what do I want to do when I dance? Like, what do I say after that? So let's go again. You can
Yeah.
start. Let's give it a shot.
Here are some hints and tips. So drop your agenda. That's one of them. Surprise yourself.
Okay.
Surprise yourself by what. Remember, there are no mistakes, so no matter what word comes out, it's perfect, and we're going to work with it. So we'll try
Okay.
again. We'll go with
Okay.
tonight.
Okay. I
Moved.
downtown.
Full stop. Then
Went
to
dinner.
with
My friend.
correct.
My.
Well done. Round of applause to that.
Okay, wait, that was good. It is really hard to let go. Like, even going through that experience, I'm telling myself drop the agenda because we're
Mm,
really always trying to hold on to what's next.
right,
And is that the point of that?
right. And I'm attached to my computer, so I hope I don't mess things up. But there's a really nice way to play this game by yourself. I'll use my chest. I was going to stand up and use my
Okay.
kneecaps, but so we could, and anybody could do this. You could either hit your legs or some other part of your body and tell yourself a one word at a time story. What's quite good is maybe there's a question you'd like to answer. So maybe the question is, where shall I invest? Let's say, where shall I invest? And we could start doing a tap. And then we could give ourselves a one word at a time story, dropping our agenda. I should invest in chalk boards because they need wrapping paper and I'm good at that. Whatever. And we may surprise ourselves
Right.
in where we go in the story if we allow ourselves some freedom to play.
It also allows us to trust our gut.
Oh, nice.
Right? It allows us to trust what's inside of us because and get every time I hear you say drop your agenda, I think about how we rationalize everything, and how our rationalized mind hinders us. It makes us hesitate to, so it's almost like go with what's inside of you.
I love that. And which is another improv thing, right? We say yes and.
Yes.
We have a toolkit as individuals. Very often that toolkit is one that we've created throughout our lives and our trials and tribulations, but it's quite narrow. It's our knee-jerk or go-to toolkit that, I'm in this situation, I'll use this tool. I'm in that situation, I'll use this tool. And what we want, and what improv invites us to do, is to expand our repertoire of tools. Try out things we've not done before. Think things we've not done before. Experiment in ways we've not done before, because then we're going to get a different result from that which the toolkit normally produces.
So when you say toolkit, are you talking about all of the experiences, the things in our knowledge base that we go back into, that we tap into quite naturally,
right.
In order to deal with everyday life? Is that what you're speaking to when you say toolkit?
Almost. We could call it the survival kit that we've come through life's journey with, right? So I learned at a super young age, if someone was treating me in this way, that's how I respond. And I bring that into my adulthood, and I experience a person treating me in this way, and I respond like that. Instead of saying, yes, and what could I do different? How could I try out a new way of being and see what that new response might yield?
Yes. And it can also be something, just to kind of piggyback on what you're saying, it can also be someone who's like, I was told all of my life that I needed to be able to do this or be this. But this opportunity is now ahead of me. Yes, I can go ahead and take that opportunity and see what comes out, what the outcome will be.
Love, right?
Do you have yes.
I'm sure you might have done this in your life before, and all praise to the people who do, who say yes to something without knowing how they're going to make it work, right? That concept of, I'm going to say yes to flying the plane, is that how it goes? And build the plane as I am doing it. And just developing that confidence that says the opportunity would not have presented if I were not ready. So I must have the resources available to help me to get there.
The other thing that I like about improv, and even with the game that we just played, is that it almost forces change. It forces the different transitions. And the reason why I think about that is because as we're navigating life, we're moving from one thing to another, usually when we're trying to figure out what's next for ourselves, right? So there's constant transitions that are occurring, and it seems like improv almost, and let me just say this, change and transitions and the concept of change can be quite uncomfortable, which is why the word game, the one-way word game with the agenda and trying to hold on to things, it's because you have an expectation of what it's supposed to be like. The transitions can be harder, and so it kind of teaches you, right, about that. There is, when you take those things into consideration, how do you help someone through, or how does improv help someone get better with the concept of transitions or change in their life?
When we practice improv regularly, which as in when we practice anything regularly, we're building new neural pathways. We're firing new cylinders. Not only does this help the brain get fitter and younger, because we're not going on the same neural pathway we've always been, but we're striking out in other directions. That gives us that flexibility or fitness when we're facing other transitions. So as in the same way that meditation brings you into the present and helps you build those muscles, improv brings you into the present and helps you build those muscles. Anything that's practiced with consciousness and awareness is going to help you to build those muscles. My choice happens to be improv because it's so much fun and powerful.
Yes, absolutely. One of the things when we were speaking to transitions before, you talked about yes, moving forward, but also your ability to let go of where you were at that time as well. And in fact, one of the things that, because I wrote it down, it was there is a mourning for what you leave behind sometimes when transitions happens. Can you speak more to that?
Yeah, I think that's what makes oftentimes that's what makes a new potential future, so scary, is because it requires a new identity. And a new identity means that I have to shed some parts of my current identity, probably that I'm super attached to by now. But those parts of me may not benefit me going forward. And so there is a shedding that is required. And very often that deserves a mourning. It deserves a goodbye to an old me. I'm excited to welcome a new me, maybe even rituals to do that. But of course, there is going to be a sadness and a toughness to saying goodbye to what once was familiar to us, especially if we don't know who we're becoming, and we have to move with a mindset of faith that who I'm becoming is the person I need to be to achieve the next level in life.
Absolutely. And so moving that along, if you can start, you said this too, if you can start looking for who you want to be, you can create that life that you will find ideal. Can you tell me more about that as well?
I must give credit to the person from whom I heard this concept, and it may well not be his concept either. He may have heard it from somewhere else, but I run a monthly, with a partner of mine, Ian Hutton, I run a monthly global storytelling circle. One of our very often attendees, who attends very often, Bruce Wade, shared this beautiful concept with me, which I've really been taken by. Very often we set our mind on the destination, and I'm going to just pin an age to it. Don't know how the age your listeners might be, but let's say it's 60. And I say, oh, when I'm 60, I want to be in this place. Maybe I want to be on a desert island, or maybe I want to be at the top of the corner office in a grand whatever. I seem to somehow design the where I want to land up. And Bruce shared a beautiful story where he said he has come to recognize, and thanks to him, I now too have done the same. It's not where I want to be, it's who do I want to be. So who do I want to be when I reach 60 or 50 or 40 or whomever? And if I can get really clear on that who that I want to be, the environment where I land up is probably going to be perfect for the who that I'm becoming. So I think that's almost has a spiritual bent to it. It means that the work I have to do is on the who I want to become, and worry and drop my agenda about the where I want to see myself.
It's an interesting thought, right? Because you're right. When we do plan our future, we do plan where. We don't plan who. Like, who are we going to be? But as we're planning the where, we are thinking about who and how, right? It's the actual who, believe it or not, that holds us back, like the conversation that we were just talking about. So it's a very interesting concept to think more of who you want to be in the future versus where do you want to be.
Right.
It's a very interesting thought. And I'm glad. Thank you for expounding on that.
It just brings me back to improv. And the other thing we do in improv, of course, is we create characters on the fly. And that,
yes,
that is another beautiful muscle building tool for learning to step out of who I am and recognizing I can step into anybody that I create. I can choose their backstory. I can choose their idiosyncrasies. I can choose everything about them as I step into a new character. And if I can do that on a regular basis, I have the flexibility muscles to design any me I wish to be.
I'm so glad we're talking about this, because I really hope that after this conversation, people will find a local chapter to join Improv, or even follow Michelle. She has a lot of great stuff on YouTube to just continue to practice this. And I know she has other projects that she's working on. So definitely we'll talk more about that at the end. But in this mission that I have through this podcast, that my biggest thought is always, how do we get people to first tap into their imagination, and then second, be willing to do the things that come up for them, which is why I feel like improv is like the perfect way to do exactly what you just said, and that's to flex your muscles so that you can get better at it. And I hope that I hope that if you are listening, that you take some of these things to heart. No, let me say this again. I hope that if you are listening, this is helpful as you are thinking through what you would want to do in your future, and how you're planning and who you are, how you're planning who you are in your future. So I know we're coming to a close. I wanted to ask first, though, did you want to play another quick improv game before we closed, or and if not, it's okay. I have like 2 more questions too. Yes.
No, that's perfect. It's always you'll notice I go, ugh, and I always think, what can we do? Because improv is, in its truth form, a team sport. It's usually a group of people who are playing off one another. Of course, there is an art form called two-prov, and I wish I were more familiar with that, because I'd say, hey, let's you and I get on stage and do a two-prov piece of work. I did want to offer another lovely game for playing with oneself. We've had a look at I'll rephrase it, another lovely game that one can play alone. And that is What If? And it's simply this, Sherelle, most people are prone to see or to experience fear about something they wish to achieve. So it might sound like, I would love to get a promotion, but what if I'm not a good leader? What if I don't gain the popularity of my team? What if I'm missing skills? We really tend to finish what off in a negative context. And I would like to offer, what would happen if we finished every what if with a superbly positive phrase? So, what if I would be the most outstanding leader in the organization? What if I was so talented that they made me CEO the day after they gave me this promotion? What if my getting this promotion impressed my husband and kids so much that they too wanted promotions? And I encourage everybody who's listening to offer yourself an opportunity to try a what if for 5 minutes flat, and only answer that what if with the most outstanding positive results. And not only is that going to, raise your own sense of optimism, but you may find in some of those what ifs a fabulous solution for what it is you're trying to do.
I love that. I am going to practice that myself. What if this podcast really takes off? What if what if we get messages back saying this has impacted my life very, and now I've made all of these changes.
Yes.
What if, I don't know, I'm trying to think of one more.
One more. What if?
No, I will think of one more. Okay. What if, tomorrow I get a call and they say, because of this, I was able to ask for a raise. I don't know. I'm trying
Love it.
to think it through.
Love it.
This
The
was absolutely
encouragement
wonderful.
is always not to think it through too much, and just to
Yes.
allow, and you used the word earlier, just to allow one's imagination to roll.
Yes, absolutely. And to drop the agenda.
Beautiful.
I think that's going to stay with me forever now. Drop the agenda. I usually say manage my expectations, but I like drop the agenda.
Nice.
So one of the things with this envisioner's journey is the word envision. And my team and I have had this conversation and of what does the word envision actually mean? Because we've heard envision, we've heard vision, visionary, imagine, right? But sometimes envision is not really a familiar word to everybody. So I've made it my personal mission to ask everyone who comes on the show, what does the word envision mean for you?
I love this word. I want to manipulate the word a little bit because I'm an improviser. And I feel that the vision bit, we know that's the picture we're painting, the who we want to be, the what we would love to achieve because of who we want to be. And the in bit, I'm going to manipulate that a little to imagine it starts with an IN and not an EN. Or we can leave it as an EN, but that there's something really personal about that. So there's something very internal. It is about a creation, and creation must be an inside job, and it must be a very personal alignment to our values, our meaning. So I would have manipulated a bit to say I envision as an internal, and I'll keep it as EN because there's something about the E that I like. So it's in the eye of the beholder, right? I'm envisioning my own internal, very personal, to me, beautiful visual for myself.
Oh, I love that. Thank you for sharing that. I love that. This has been absolutely wonderful, Michelle. And I know that our listeners are going to want to know how to get in contact with you. So if they want to learn more, how would they reach out to you?
I have I don't know what you call that. My name, if you Google it, and I'm going to give you the name now, it's Motiv Coach. MOTIVCOACH. Motiv Coach. No E in there. Motiv Coach. If you Google that, that will lead you to my website, my YouTube, my Instagram, my Facebook. I love connecting with people and would be delighted if anybody would like to pop on in and send me a friend request. And those social sites will keep you up to speed. If I'm ever running an improv workshop, I would be so thrilled if people would come out of curiosity to see what
I love that. Thank you so much. And of course, what we will do is include this in as a link wherever you're listening to the podcast. You will have an access to the link to click right on it so that you can get to Michelle much faster. Thank you so much, Michelle, for being here. I look forward to more conversations. This went better than I could have ever expected. And I'm really excited about everything that you shared. And I know that it's going to change